Thank you for all who did that. It was we have quite a few people. There's a lot of farmers, egg producers, big number from Leduc County, so that's great to see. And a lot of people that do some sort of rotational grazing, but I think that'll be good. So I'm Amber from Farming Forward. I'm the Extension and Communications Coordinator. You'll also see that we have Carrie St. Pierre, who is our director here. We wanted to co-host with Leduc to provide this with you guys. So Sharon, if you want, I'll let you hop in and do your intro. And it's great that everybody's here tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, I'm with Leduc County as the local food coordinator, and that just means supporting local food and egg businesses with resources and planning events such as this. So, just so you know what to expect this evening, we'll have our presenter talk for about an hour, and then the last half hour or so, we'll have a Q&A period. So if you've got any questions as we're going along, put them in the chat right away, or especially if it's pertaining to a certain topic, because the speaker will be going through a lot of topics. So it might be nutrition, and then just put your question, and then that way, then we'll know more specifically what area you're tackling if it isn't obvious in the question. So yeah, do that along the way as we go. We've been wanting to do a livestock series for some time, like from the Leduc County end, and I talked to Amber and she was game, and so we kind of brainstormed and started calling the local or Alberta livestock associations, and they were all game. So that's how we came up with this series. So today we're talking about goats 101, and 2 weeks later is sheep and then alpacas. So maybe some of you will be on those other sessions as well. And I've mentioned this, well, I briefly mentioned the associations, but we've got Alberta Lamb Producers, Alberta Goat Association, and the Alpaca Producers as well. And besides that, we have support from RDAR and the Government of Saskatchewan, their Saskatchewan Agriculture Department. So we really appreciate all the support that they provided in helping and plan and discussing what topics we would cover. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speaker. This evening we have Mallory Kaiser, who'll be presenting on Goats 101. Mallory currently sits as the president of the Alberta Goat Association and is a director of the Canadian National Goat Federation. She's a busy lady. And so I'd like to hand it off to Mallory if you're ready, and you can tell us a little bit more about yourself and dive into your presentation.
All right.
There. Okay.
Yes, there's just a reminder that this is being recorded. All right. Good evening, everybody. Oh, and of course, hang on, we went through this already. There we go. Hi, everybody. My name is Mallory Kaiser. I'm based in the Peace Country part of Alberta there, about an hour and a half northwest of Edmonton, or Grand Prairie, sorry. And I raise Kiko goats, which is a meat breed from New Zealand. And I've been I would say officially raising goats since 2015. We kind of got into about 2013, 2014. And how I got into the interest in the goat industry, I grew up on a 100 head cattle beef farm and a grain farm here in the Peace Country. And my grandpa got sick with cancer and I was in college. They sold the cows while I was away, kind of thing. And when I came back and met my husband, there was some interest in I wanted to get back into livestock, but he was not a cowboy nor a farm kid, but more of a country kid, but not much of an animal interest or knowing what to. And I just happened to be listening to CBC radio about, and it happened to be Lori Freeze, one of Alberta Goat's past presidents, was talking about the goat industry and how it's a It's a needed industry, a meat industry and fiber, and also in dairy industry in Canada, and how 60% of the world's red meat consumption is goat meat. And also how, as of this past year, we import $20 million of goat meat from Australia and New Zealand. So with those kind of numbers, I was like, well, this has got to be pretty easy. So I got to get into it. So I ended up going to some Alberta goat conferences, and here I am at the top of the goat world here. So that's a little bit about me. And I've got my husband Sean and my two boys, Kaz and Zach, here on our farm. So we'll get into this here. So one thing I just want to note is that Alberta Goat and myself, I'm not a vet, and other than we do have a vet on our staff as a director, we can't ever give vet advice. So always try to make sure that you can contact or find a vet if you have vet questions. I can answer some things, but I can't specifically give you a diagnosis. So just to be clear and fair. So, little information here. So, as a goat producer, some of you guys already know if you already own livestock, but if you don't, in order to get any medication for your livestock at a vet, you have to have a PID number, your premises ID. This link here will take you to that to register. It's pretty easy to sign up for it. It also helps if there is a wildfire. For example, when the fires were happening in Fort McMurray, producers that were in the area, they were able to send out notifications and contact those producers right away to let them know of the fire and the outcome, or if they needed to evacuate. So that was really great to have. And also the Canadian Cattle Identification Agency, I'll begin to a little bit later, but I was going to be a resource and a website for the new traceability tags that are going to be coming out and where to purchase them if you already own cattle or sheep. You're probably already I guess not so much sheep with cattle. You're already familiar with this website. And then the other ones here is the Alberta Goat, our website. It's a wonderful website because I made it, but also there's lots of great information on it. All the information that is on this presentation can be found on our website for free. So, but anything that's more in depth, becoming a member, we've done this presentation over a span of 5.5 hours, and we condensed it into an hour. So there's more that go into depth with questions and stuff on our website, but you have to become a member, Alberta Goat member to do that. So we'll get into it here a bit more. So the basics for your goat nutrition, and let me know if I need to talk slower. For your goats, and much like any most animals, you can have clean water being out there for them. Just much like other animals, they will see a puddle that's got pee and poo runoff in it and they'll still drink it, but you don't want that for them. But you'll notice that they'll still sometimes will do that or eat snow. But the best thing is to have clean water for them. So make sure your water bowls are cleaned out. And for, I think Leduc's a little bit better, but for like us in the Peace Country in that Westlock area, is that we're quite low in copper and selenium in our soils. So for your when you're looking for your mineral or loose mineral, you're looking for to have that copper, zinc, and selenium. So what's going to be different from the sheep is that goats need copper. They'll get something called a copper tail, and I'll show that later in a slide what that looks like. Loose is always going to be better for them, but you can do the blocks, but just realize it's harder on their teeth. And cattle substitute is also great, but again, you have to be careful with it because it'll have copper in it, and sheep can't have that. When you're looking for your hay, because goats are browsers, you're looking for you can have that nice alfalfa grass mix in it. Again, alfalfa is not great for horses, so it's one of those things you have to be aware of when you're buying your hay. And it can't, you don't want to have a bunch of foxtail in it, right? That still can cause choking as well. So, a nice clean alfalfa mix hay is a really great option. Goats can do well on oats and barley and peas, whole or rolled, obviously for absorption and breakdown to do better at. And for your pastures and wherever you're going to be grazing them, you have to remember that goats are browsers. Where you have sheep and horses and cattle that are grazers, goats eat up. So they will go for your willows, your woodier plants. they will like with for example, like with thistles, they'll eat the purple bulb and the leaves, and they'll leave just a stem out in your pastures and your fields kind of thing. So they're really great for that, and they also will break down compared to they're the best in the animal kingdom, or I guess the grazing um, um, and the kingdom of livestock, I guess, for breaking down the seeds in their ruin. So they will break it down so you don't have as many seeds left in their fecal matter. It's always best to do recommended for get your feed testing done. I don't know for sure if Leduc County offers that, but I know at my county, for example, you can send in your hay samples and they'll send them off for you and to, well, obviously with a fee, but they'll send them off for you to get your hay testing done. And for just to let you know that goats don't and shouldn't eat everything. I know that's a fun myth that you'll see pictures of goats eating tin cans and stuff, but they won't eat it. They shouldn't be eating it. You still want to be picking up your twine and everything because they will, just like cattle, they will chew on it because they're curious and could get really sick from that. So, nutrition for pregnant goats. Your daily feed intake for your goats ranges from 3 to 4% of their body weight and is influenced by feed factors and growth and production stages. So for your does, as you get into the closer to that month and a half before you start kidding, you really want to be giving that high energy foods. So with getting heavy, like more straight alfalfa and giving them more grain and stuff so that they can really put their energy into keeping their body weight on and putting that energy into growing those kids in them type of thing. And for goats for a ratio, it's 11 goats to 1 cow for a 1,100 pound round bale. And so here's a couple of or a few examples of some different feeders that are out there. The Hay Boss feeder is one that some goat producers really like. The bale sits on a platform here, and then the goats eat into it. I haven't heard as how great it is for getting their horns caught into it, but they really are big sponsors and supporters of the goat industry. So it's something that you can even put square bales in there. This example here is a feeder that we use, and this panel here slides on these bars as the goats push in the bale. Because often where you don't want to use your regular big round bale feeders that are like off the ground is that the goats will eat it into a mushroom shape, and then all of a sudden it'll get top heavy and slide, and it will pinch and squish their heads. They can't get to it. But if you have cattle and horses in there, sometimes that will stop that from happening. But it's one of those things that you have to watch for. This still can happen as long as it's sliding in. It usually stops it. But it also, if it does tip, it just tips along there, or the top just sloughs off. So you still have to monitor it. But if you're by yourself, or you don't have the equipment, it's nice to have that because you can pick it up, move it. It's not heavy, or it's if you're by yourself, it's an easy thing to do. And these little feeders are nice too if you only have a few goats around. There's really little to no waste. The goats eat the hay and the leaves that drop down at the bottom. So, and it's a really great little option. And there's lots of different types of feeders that are kind of mimic the same idea. Goats can be really wasteful with their feeding because they like to climb up on the top and eat and poop on everything. So it's nice, even if you do have cattle or something that can come in and underneath and eat it, but they will eat low if you push them. But obviously, then you kind of lead into worms and everything like that. So some kid nutrition. So it's really important for kids when they're born to get that colostrum from their mom within the first 2 hours of life. And if mom's not there, then you have a colostrum supplement there. Weaning, so milk until they're weaning. So usually with kids, they're going to be with mom until they're about 90 days is kind of the golden rule. The boys can be pulled a little bit sooner, just depending if you're banding or not. But they can stay on longer. It's just you're not giving your doe as much time to recover. Goat milk replacer is a good thing, but you also, with your goat replacer, you'll need to add more pellets or nutrition if you want those kids to continue their growth rate and be on par. Just having them on the bottle just doesn't quite give them that growth that they need. Clean water, again, same with your basic minerals there, and same thing with the feed for your kids there. And you can get some of that basic kid pellet and growth, or kid grow is what they'll call it, like at UFA, or at your feed supply if they have it. So one thing I wanted to mention, because we've been talking about oats and grain and stuff, that a lot of things you'll probably see on Facebook is people say don't feed your kids grain, especially your males, your wethers or your bucks, because they're going to get calculi stones. And so what I wanted to make sure that we be really clear about here. So what this is that if your goats aren't getting the proper nutrition and minerals to counter the vitamin intake, that this is where you'll get these stones. And in the medical book that we have, it does say that you can cut it and deal with it yourself, but we just strongly suggest this if you have a buckling or a wether that has like a water belly and he's crying in a lot of pain, that just to take him to the vet. But the biggest thing is if they're getting lots of good mineral mixed in, and you're giving them some grain and not just heavy grain all the time, that you shouldn't be running into this problem. If you are, then you need to kind of take a step back and evaluate what you're having. So I just wanted to make that, I guess, deal with that myth that yes, you can feed grain, just you got to be making sure that you're also giving minerals as well. And so one of the things that we deal with in the goats industry is coccidiosis. And essentially it is a parasite that will start destroying the gut lining on it can affect adults because if you were to test a goat for coccidiosis, it be positive for it, but it's low. They all have it in them. It's not a terrible one to have. They're all going to have it, but with kids, their guts aren't prepared for it yet. And so if you have a doe that defecates and she hasn't been treated at all with like a product like Decox mixed in with your grain, that the kids will nibble on, they're curious and they're born, they'll nibble on their mom's feces, and then they'll pick up the coccidiosis, and then it will just, they can look fine and maybe have a little bit of a poopy bum, but other than that, they're growing and doing really well. It's not till you pull them off of mom that you go, oh, you are like really poopy and really sick and you're losing weight and you don't look well. I've had this happen where I had gotten some kids out of BC, and like 4 of the 10 died because they had such high load of coccidiosis. And then the drug to treat it is called Baycox, and it's like really expensive medication. So the best thing is to prevent it. Decox is probably like the safest at this mixture that we have on here. That you can mix in with your grain. Again, it's one of those things that some vets and groups might not recommend because it is poisonous to horses and cats and dogs. But oops, sorry, my chair is falling down. But it's really important product to prevent that, because that really, it breaks your heart to have to see an animal just deteriorate like that from coccidiosis. And so for some a little more happier pictures, this is pictures of my farm. This is some examples of some feeders that you could be using. Obviously, you have this really nice trough one. You could be made out of wood. This is a really nice one made out of steel. And this one here is like a mineral feeder that has a little roof on it to keep everything dry for either your wet, for your loose or blocked mineral. You can have it on the ground too, but it's just like, the high end like way to keep things kind of clean and healthy. And then this is a feeder that we have. We have 2 of these on the farm. And you can put this little plate down, and so that only the kids can get into there and eat. And then the other side can be set up for the does to eat at. So that way you're monitoring it, especially if you've got, kid feed on the kid growth feed on one side and just oats on the other side, right? So that it's everybody's getting a little bit type of thing. So we've got shelters here. So for goats, as long as you have 3 sides, or as you can see, these are my oops, my shelters here that are just kind of four-sided essentially. Um, they're 16 feet long, 8 feet wide, and this is what my goats live in all winter. Other than when it's like -40 and I feel really bad for them, I might put them in my barn. But for the most part, we have it on skids and we can drag these out anywhere. The biggest thing is making sure that you've got lots of bedding and replacing it. So how those, much like other cattle and other animals, they'll dig down into the straw pack there and to stay warm. But if the straw pack underneath is wet or damp, you're not doing yourself any good. So making sure you've got nice clean straw, or wood chips, and keeping it clean and dry. We'll uh, we'll start in the fall time by putting like full square bales into each shelter. We've got two in each pen, and I've got four pens for these shelters, and then it just kind of keeps building up, type of thing. So you want to be able to have that and keep them out of the wind and the rain is key. And in the wintertime, if you really need to, we'll put a tarp across here, and so the goats can still get in, and it stays like -11, and there's still air ventilation, so it's not getting humid or really stinky in there. So and keeping that air draft is a good thing to have too. And then we just pull them off in the summertime, and we clean up all the bedding, and so the ground can dry out again. So, and then the goat code of practice says that you need a 5 by 5 space per animal. Sometimes they cuddle together and you can't make that, but for the code of practice, is what's recommended. So this picture here is about frostbite and why bedding is really important. This doe here didn't have enough bedding, and um, her tit froze and is now sloughing off. So I just wanted to make sure that there's, an example of why it's so important to have really good bedding down for your animals, um, for your livestock. So your fencing, so with the goat code of practice, it says you can pretty much do a mixed match of everything, but for goats, the common term is if it can hold water, it can hold a goat. So this is some examples of my place here. And down in this corner here, I'm using buffalo fencing, so it's smaller at the bottom and then they slowly get bigger at the top. And I've got lots of pasture with bush in it and lots of dead and dying poplars, so they fall down onto my fence line, but I can just chop up the tree, pull my fence up, and it's back to being normal again. So some people swear just by doing electric. I just have one string of electric there just to keep things in there a little bit tighter because the kids like to wander into my dad's wheat field and he gets a little grumpy with me. So, but yes, as long as there is nothing that's going to be catching on them or hurting them. So, for example, here we have you can get this nice netting here. And as long as you kind of keep the ground mowed before you put your fencing down, it seems to do the best for keeping that current going. And the example here of your spacing for your wires here is 9, 17, 25, 36 is kind of what's recommended. We ran with 2 wires this summer in kind of a custom area that we were grazing, and we had no issues. Dogs were able to go out, and the does and the kids all respected it when we haven't really ran any electric, so that worked out really well, kind of thing. And then obviously this example here is, one of probably their safest examples that you can do. You can have barbed wire on your fences, but you just want to make sure that you don't have something like this where if that doe tries to jump, she might catch her bag on it and you'll have a really bad time. Within like this kind of fencing is fine, but this here can be really dangerous for your goats. So if this barbed wire is more lined up with the top of this, it'd probably be a lot better. Or if this page wire here was higher, it's probably only 4 feet high. You probably want to have about 5 feet high page wire type of thing. And then another fun example here of these paneling here with no support and this doe taking full advantage of it. So in Alberta, we have 2 seasons here. We've got summer and winter. And depending on the breed of goat and your care and what you're doing with them and how well you're feeding them, they'll probably need their hooves trimmed 2 times or more in the year. In the summertime, or in the springtime, after my does are kidded, will trim all their hooves, and then they eventually, soon after that, will be going out to the pasture, and their hooves do really well because they're moving, they're climbing, and they're doing stuff, and they're breaking down their hooves naturally. And and they have some place dry to go to. They're not standing in the pasture where it's wet all the time. They have some sort of shelter with between the trees or the shelters that we have out there, kind of thing, right? Um, so there is tools that you can like they're really nice serrated hoof trimmers that you can get. You can also hire somebody to do it. It is just important to be aware of hoof rot. You'll know if you have hoof rot, and we'll think that is one of the pictures coming up here. And so here's an example of what when you're trimming your hooves, what you want your angles to look like and how to correct it as best you can. And obviously there's really good YouTube videos out there about it. And here's a front view of it, of what obviously this is your best claw shape that you want to try to have with your goats. And if you're not too sure about it, ask a neighbor that has done a lot of hoof trimming. They maybe come and help you and show you. On the Alberta Goat website, we have a really good video on demonstrating on how to cut. So one of the things that is a great tip here, you can kind of see in the hoof lines here that there's lines in the hoof, and that will tell you what their hoof angle is actually supposed to be. So it's a nice like little line. Obviously with the white goats with white hooves, it's a little bit easier, but the black ones, you can kind of see it too. And I think here in the front view, you can really see those nice straight lines, right? Where here they're, really crooked. So that kind of tells you where you need to cut it at. And so here are some examples of some hoof rot. So you see these, the wall is separated from the hoof here and here, and especially right in here, you have all this area. So to deal with this, you need to clean all that black out, and it's going to be stinky. Um, and there is care. And so you want to clean it all out, trim off the wall that is separated, and use copper iodine, this product here. It's like a green thing. You want to wear gloves because it dyes the heck out of your hands. And put that into there and then pack it with either gauze or paper towel and use vet wrap, not too tight, and to let that area kind of clean and heal from the rot. So that is uh, the best thing you can do for it. And then here, the toes have just grown out a bit. So the toes just need to be cut off just right about here. And the idea is when you're cutting down too is what can happen, especially in the wintertime, because their goats are stepping on the ice, that you'll see, if you trim too far, you'll cut their hoof and they'll bleed. And then also, yeah, you got to be putting copper on and wrapping their hoof right because you don't want them to get an infection. But the thing too is that they can also bruise that pad as well from the ice. And so this, you have to be, you eventually kind of learn and figure out where on that hoof you want to, where you need to cut, because you'll look at it, go like, the hoof is this long, and I need to get it down to here, but I'm seeing red already, and that's just might be some bruised hoof that you need to trim away, so that way they feel better and can and and be a happier goat. So this was one thing that I've been trying to update, and as it's been happening. So with identification, um, so with identification, goats can have different types of identification on your farm. Right now, as last year, goats were accepted into the Canada Gazette underneath Canada Gazette 1 underneath the traceability. So what that means is that goats are at the same level of traceability as cattle are. So cattle, when you go to take them to auction, you will see like they have an RFID tag in their ear, that like a little button or whatever they're using. Goats will need to have the same thing for transportation, and you need to report your movement and transportation. That was supposed to be a soft start beginning of this year, and then with Justin Trudeau stepping down, the program is at a full pause. So as of right now, you don't need to report any movements or have to have tags in any ears because the program is paused until more happens. And but yeah, so there's a couple different ones here. This is just a nice little thin band. It's about as thick as my pinky or the tag that you get like this at UFA. And this just pops into the ear, and it's just only required for transportation of that animal to an area of risk. So taking them to the auction mart or to the vet is considered a high risk. But if you're just kind of taking them, I guess some people use them as pets, um, taking them kind of with you somewhere that there's not going to be other livestock interactions or low risk, then you don't need to report or have the tag. Or if they're just staying on your farm until you sell them, or if they're just there milking, again, you don't need to have the RFID tags in. You can just have your simple UFA identification tags. And this one here is a leg band that you can get that just goes onto the leg, and you can expand it as the animal grows, if that is one thing that you want to do. So it's important when you're tagging that your equipment is clean and that your tag is clean and the area is clean. So you take like your iodine and just kind of put on some paper towel and kind of quickly rub the ear off so that it's cleaned. And here you'll see the areas here that you want to use for tagging. And the idea is, accidents happen. You could hit these arteries here, and there are some nerves in there, and that's not great, and it really hurts. So please try your best. You can actually feel when you're putting your fingers there, you can actually feel those arteries in the ear. So when you're doing it, just try to keep your two fingers on that artery, those arteries, so that way you can do a quick and safe ear punch or tag with the air tagger. So yeah, we'll get into health here. So the main signs of your sick goat. Your animal's not eating, it's not chewing its cud. It's kind of separating itself from the group and looking kind of sad and slow and depressed, hanging ears and eyes, um, dull, hutch stance, and just not real any interest in their kids too when you get to that. If they're on kids kind of thing. And I think the chewing the cud thing is probably your biggest sign of that. And of that because goats they want to eat, especially if they're used to getting grain or treats or whatever you're doing. There's gonna be a really big sign that something is wrong. They're really looking sulking in on their sides. They have obviously feces on their back end or blood. That would be the more high risk one. Or if they're looking too full, especially on their left side, that would indicate bloat, and we'll talk about that here in another slide here soon. um, running noses, and sometimes they will get some respiratory things, and you can use or identifying that your animal isn't feeling well. So when to call your vet, and this is a fun little pic, like that picture of that kid. Um, so when you have an animal that is not well, the best thing you can do is to kind of isolate them so that if there is something that is infectious, that you're reducing the risk of it spreading to the rest of the group. And so for when you are going to be calling your vet, they're going to be asking you some questions, or calling any vet. They'll want to know what his temperature is. So if you're dealing with an infection, obviously your temperature is going to be up, or if you're dealing with hypothermia, your temperature is going to be down. So these are your temperatures here for your adults and for your kids. So obviously looking at the flank, seeing how fast that air is coming in and out of that animal, if they're like is what we're talking about there. And again, we're looking at their abdomen. If it's bloated, is the animal grinding its teeth? Obviously it goes on top teeth, but their back teeth, they'll start grinding that if they're in a lot of pain. So that's things to kind of take note of for your vet, so that they kind of have an idea of things they can start checking off and identifying what could be to be wrong with the animal. So here's some examples of bloat. This on the side here is an example of bloat. So goats are going to get bloat always on their left side here. And if you're not sure, like maybe they just ate and they're just a little bit extended, the the biggest thing you're going to be doing is if you grab that doe or goat and you flick it, your finger on it, and if it sounds like a skin drum, you know that you've got some bloat, some bloat issues there. And this little guy here is an example of a little guy just not feeling well. And either he's eaten too much fresh grass, or he's just picked out a bunch of grain, or maybe he does have scours or some sort of parasite. But this is what it's going to look like on, and we'll get into some examples of some dirty bums here. So now there's some other great examples of pictures of visuals of bloat here. So there's two different kinds of bloat. There's free gas bloat, and there's frothy bloat. So frothy bloat, you'll be seeing like actual foam and froth at their mouths. And free gas bloat is you're not going to see so much of a visual by their mouth, but you'll be seeing it definitely on their sides. And some producers, they will just leave baking soda out as free choice mixed in with their mineral. And if they're having constant bloat issues, it doesn't hurt them or anything. Sometimes they just won't eat it, but it's up to them. Bloat Ease, this product here is a great product. You pretty much just, if you can open their yap up and give them the dose that's recommended on the bottle, or and it will immediately will give them a lot of relief from the bloating. So, but anything else beyond that, there are other things that you can do, but it's a little more advanced. We'll keep her to the basics for now. You can tube and things like that, but we'll keep things simple for today. So then we kind of talked about we touched on coccidiosis here a little bit earlier, but there are different parasites that animals can get. Again, you're looking for that rough hair coat, depression, diarrhea, and or a bottle jaw can be one of them. So right underneath here, this I can't remember what the name of the organ is, but it will swell up, and it can either mean that they aren't getting enough copper, or it could also mean that they have a heavy parasite load and it's affecting that organ. So Alberta, if there's enough interest and people can put into the chat there, on our board, Dr. Melissa Moggy, she's the only one in Canada certified to teach the parasites course that can be used for sheep, goats, and alpacas. And you get the little identification card that comes with it that helps you identify when you need to deworm. So there is that option. You can ask the county or Farming Forward there if you guys are interested in that. But it's a really great course, and you come out with the being certified to identify. It's called the FOMANCHA type of thing. So yes, so a lot of producers, they get a little bit excited when they see lice type of thing. So that's what these little bugs kind of look like. The biggest thing is getting an oral dewormer. Do not put a pour on liquid dewormer that is meant for cattle. That does not work for goats, and it's not good for goats to do that. Is what Alberta Goat and I would like to express. So there are things you can do that. You can always ask your vet too about which one you should be using to identify. And often you'll see on Facebook or on other websites here, you'll see this. You'll see scabs or mange or mites. You'll often see them on the back of the hoof and up the leg. And the goats are really itchy, and it's really starting to crust, and then it oozes and bugs get in and gets infected. The best thing that you can do for that is to just remove all your bedding, because you've got mites living in some old hay that you have maybe laying around. So remove the old dirty bedding, and then contact your vet about what to do for treatment for that and what they want to do for it, just depending on their instructions for it. So when you're buying your goats or anything, the biggest thing I want to do heavy emphasis on is biosecurity for your livestock. And So off sometimes that you will see maybe just a little bit of crusting, maybe on the nose or maybe on the lips a little bit. But you're all the goat's really cute, so I'll just buy it. So Orf is a virus, and it is as I have here, it's zoonotic. So that means that you can get it as well. And it's kind of, I guess, to keep it simple and clear, it's kind of like having like the chicken pox. You kind of get it, and then their immune system is builds tolerance to it. The worst time that you don't want to have it is during kidding season. Those kids get it on their mouth, and then they go onto the doe's teat, and then it creates this terrible scab that's really painful, and the doe starts kicking at the kids and kicking them off. And all of a sudden, you're going to start having problems. So just to be aware that when you're buying, try not to, buy animals that have clear signs of ORF, especially if your herd hasn't had any signs of it, type of thing, because all of a sudden it can be a really big problem. And it can sometimes show its face in when animals are stressed, that the virus will just kind of take over. So there's some vaccines, but are not highly effective. And for it, and we asked our vet that's on staff there, she said they talked about it very briefly once, and she doesn't think it's really available anymore in Canada. So it's to get it, they have to kind of go through their system, but be aware not to touch it. Like this silly person is pretty close to doing it in this picture. So, so know your poop. So some people get really excited when their kids are pooping, the kids are pooping in their first week. And it's much like human babies, their first week of poops is all sorts of colors and you get a little panicky. But this is really normal poop. That just means that that doe has got really high fat in her colostrum and in her milk. And it's a good sign. Things you have to really be careful for is that because it's really sticky, like caramel, like sticky, that it can get stuck on their fur and then they can't poop anymore. Or if it's a female kid, that the poop will go over their vagina and then all of a sudden they can't pee anymore. So you just put a glove on because it's so sticky and stinky, that put a glove on with hot water and like dish soap or warm water, I should say, and just kind of pick it out of their fur. And after a few days, their stomachs will be used to their mom's milk there, and they shouldn't be. But to be signed, the yellow poop you need to be worried about is the scouring here, and that means you need to really contact your vet because your animals and or kid is going to start getting really dehydrated from that because they're just defecating so much. And yeah, isolate that animal from the group if there is that, and just contact your vet there about what the treatment is going to be if you have like heavy pooping and scours, like whether it's like liquid. And here's a great example of some scours that you don't want compared to that other boy there where it was still kind of a thick poop in that picture I showed earlier. This is bad. Bad news here. So again, it can be zoonotic as well. So you want to make sure you're being careful around yourself, and especially for kids, you don't want this getting into the rest of the herd. So even when I cattle and stuff, it's the same thing. You want to be isolating that kid, getting them cleaned up, and getting them to the vet there to get the right medicine to deal with it. And then here's another little guy. He's really sunken down, looking really sad about it. So yes. And so here we have Fairview, my local vet here in Fairview. She made this kit for one of our conferences. So yeah, I think you guys will have the printout of this or take a screenshot of it or a picture of it. It's really great things to have on here. And to keep yourself safe and your animals for your kidding season. And final tips on health here. So the best prevention is to reduce your animal's exposure to parasites by just providing a clean environment. And it begins at birth by avoiding the overcrowding of your pens and your premises. Uh, Based on nutrition is very important. Balanced nutrition, sorry, is really important for your does and your lambing and kidding type of thing. And also your rotate your pastures to avoid hybrid and parasites. And um, also, if you get more into it, finding selecting animals and bloodlines that are, are more resistant to parasites. So I had mentioned already once before about biosecurity. And what we mean with biosecurity is it's not as much talked about, and some people kind of like, oh, you're just being too dramatic about it. But it's really important for your herd health and your property. So whenever you're bringing new livestock in, try to make sure that you're quarantining them for 30 days or more. I know if you don't have the space, that's really hard to do. But that way it gives them a chance to get used to your guys' the environment and the bugs that you might have in your soil. And also bind them at certain times of the year so that way you're not bringing them in right at kidding season. So that if they have something like a little more advanced here, but like chlamydia that you didn't know that that goat might have had for that goat that you got off of Kijiji, right? And just making sure you know who you're buying from and changing your coveralls, keeping things as hygienic as possible, and same thing, keeping mice out of your feed type of things so that it's you're just limiting as much exposure as possible. Um, and the same thing for your barns, especially if you got people coming back and forth. If you're doing the what's that called? But anyways, if you're having lots of people come over, either have some booties or some place that they can do like a foot dip into for their shoes, or have a different change out. Especially if they're coming from different farms, different places. It just protects yourself and your herd, kind of thing. So, yes, and I've talked about your animals. I want to really emphasize the purchase, making sure those animals are healthy. And if you ever get that gut feeling or that red flag when you go to that place to purchase, that things aren't looking um, great or the animals are there aren't looking great, then maybe take that and just be like, yeah, no, we're just going to hold off, hold off and wait. So some cute goats here. And your feed, and just keeping mice and birds out of it is such an important thing. So another thing that people get pretty excited about is we often you'll hear people talk about CL on in social media. So it is a bacteria that grows between the muscle and underneath the skin, and it's an abscess that can be spread. It can also be found in the lungs. You have to have a pretty bad infection for it. It is a zoonotic disease, and you'll see it here in the lymph nodes areas. And this picture is a really good example. I'll be showing another example here of where there's other places you can lumps and bumps, but you don't want to be touching it. And you would try to your best to not buy animals with it because the goats, it'll hurt and they'll rub it and then it'll burst open on your fence post or whatever they're rubbing it on, and then all of a sudden it's spreading, and then you have these lumps and bumps everywhere. So it's not an end all animal. They'll still take them for meat, but just realize that if they do have it in their lungs, that the meat will be rejected as the abattoirs. So they really would try not to have that there. But it is between them again, it is between the meat and the skin. But if once it's in the lungs, the animal is considered rejected for safety reasons. So, and there's no you should if you do have CL, you should be talking to your vet to lance the abscess and clean it out because they can have that controlled environment to do it. So that's one way you can do it. And then there's also a vaccines that can deal with CL. You can talk to your vet about that too to prevent it. So that is some tips there. And so here's some examples here. This is a great picture. So this was when I was talking about bottle jaw here. This is the the organ here that will expand and it'll hang all the way down here. And when you have that, so people get a little bit excited about this, but here you can have a tooth abscess or something poked into their cheek, and then their cheek gets really swollen, or somebody head-butted somebody, kind of thing. So just remember, not all abscesses or growths on the face are like CL. Some of them are just like a wattle cyst or the thyroid too. That's going to be more lower down their neck, right? If they're not getting enough thiamine, so which is essentially your salts, uh, that can be an issue, right? So just for some clarity there. And things I'll just lightly touch on is Yonis and CAE. Yonis is a bacterial infection, and it's not a reportable disease, but the animal will have just terrible weight loss. There's just no treatment for it. Especially if you're into your milking goats, it's just a really bad disease or bacterial infection that you can get in their intestines, and the animals will eventually just die. So looking for that when you're going to be purchasing animals, again with that, when that biosecurity is really important into understanding that because you don't want to be bringing this into your herd. And same thing with CAE. It's essentially the AIDS of the goat world. Um, so some examples here. This is the goat on the right here. It's got Yoni. She's just deteriorating down, and it's really sad and not a fun way to go. And CAE, animal will be about 2 years old when it will show its head, and their knees will start to swell really bad. They'll get really bad arthritis in their knees, and they will just deteriorate and not be able to walk anymore. So if you're walking to somebody's place, and if you're seeing really skinny and sad looking goats, probably not purchase there. Or if you're seeing these really fat knees, probably avoid purchasing. Uh, so this kid here, he's just sleeping. There's nothing wrong with this kid here. He's just really sleepy. But weak kid and floppy kid syndrome, uh, the biggest thing is they're probably to figure out what their body temperature is, why they're so just they're just floppy in your hands. They're still alive, but they're almost like Play-Doh in your hands, and you're just like, well, what's going on? So it's kind of case by case, but that is what they're gonna tell you to check his temperature and go through all those preventative things to figure out why your kid is just floppy. And as like it says here, possible causes we could include hypothermia, sepsis, dehydration, and white muscle disease, which we're going to get into right now. So white muscle disease, it is a lack of vitamin E and selenium. So especially in the Peace Country here, we're very much lacking selenium in our soil. And what you will see is in these pictures here, the kids' legs start to bend the wrong way when they're first born, or they start walking on their ankles, and their legs start are flipping the wrong way, and you're like, what is going on with this kid? What is wrong with it? And it's your best quick treatment to do is to give them some selenium. So this product here you can get at UFA. It's an oral, and it takes a little bit longer to get into their system because it's going through their digestive tract. You can give them a shot of selenium, but it's like 0.2 and and it's a needle into their little bodies, and you're trying to find it. It's not always the funnest thing to do. So this one, it takes a little bit longer for them for it to absorb into their system. Just yesterday I had 3 dose kid, and one of the kids, yeah, she had her back legs were kind of flopping there, and I gave her 1.5 mils as recommended on the label there, and by 6 hours later her legs were strong, and she wasn't flipping them everywhere. So there can be other things that can cause it, but in Alberta, for the most part, will be like a selenium or vitamin E deficiency kind of thing. So, and it with the oral selenium, you can probably go over a little bit, and you're not going to kill them. Where with the injectable selenium, the wrong dose, and you can kill them. So, um, it's just important and to watch for that. And they can also get white muscle disease even a week later. So you just have to kind of watch for it. And that's more of an advanced thing, but it can happen if you're just haven't been giving any selenium or vitamin E in the nutrition that you have, or if your hay is lacking in it, kind of thing. So joint ill. So this is really important when you're kids are first born, and what you'll first see is that their knees will get really swollen after a couple days, and they just can't walk and they're just crying in pain all the time. And most of the time what joint heal is going to be caused is that the mother will do her best to either chew down to the tummy, the umbilical cord, or sometimes they'll leave it there. And you want to do an iodine dip on it. I've got old film canisters I put iodine into, and then I put it, kind of scoop up the umbilical cord, give them a little dip there, and I haven't had any joint heal issues because I did it once, but it was not a fun experience to have because there's nothing really that you can do for it. And this one said, don't put any needles in the joints. That's why I want to go back to the slide quickly here, just to make sure. And again, having a clean environment those kids are born in, so you got clean straw, that they're, sometimes they get born outside and there's poop and mud and everywhere. So you try to get them cleaned up, get that disinfected, and you also can give does an 8-way vaccine that will help give that to the kids kind of thing and give them some immunity, but that's the best treatment for that. And hypothermia, that obviously your kid's temperature is getting low, and is like, again, I had kids that were born and it was -4 here the other day, and there was a bit of a wind, so they were a little bit cold, but they had eaten. So the biggest thing, that if you have kids that are cold, they will not eat. Even if you tube them or bottle them and you think you're getting into them, their digestive tract just will not work. So you want to make sure that you get their body warmed up. So again, reminder of our temperatures for kids, and that you need to get there with a rectal thermometer, and keep your goat thermometer and your house thermometer separated with whatever labeling you need. But it's there's a couple different ways to do it. So obviously in the past pictures here, she had him wrapped up with a heat bottle and electric blanket kind of wrapped around him. And some people use a dryer, like a hair blow dryer. I've got this is a small box, and I've got a space heater, and this is when I'm in the area and be able to watch. And I call it my magic heat box. And once they're warm, they'll start moving around and ready to try to find mom and trying to find that their milk type of thing. So in other desperate situations, so here you see the blow dryer here. So if you are going to use the technique of submerging them with hot, like a warm bath, try to put them into a Ziploc bag or something, because if you put them into the water, you'll wash all the scent off of them, and then the mother might reject them. So that's why this kid here is in a Ziploc bag to try to warm them up, but keeping their mom's scent on them. And these little heat lamps here, these are great ones with this plastic cage and the bulbs. It's actually pretty high in here, so the kids really like that. And then these calf warmers, I have one for when my does. I've had does that have had 4 or 5 kids, and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I need to warm them up quickly. I have an old one that was from our old cattle farm. I put them into there, and I put the heater on there, and it warms them up from the bottom, and it keeps the heat in there, and I can peek in on them. But once you start hearing them kind of shuffling around, it works well if you've got all of a sudden you came home from work and there's like, oh boy, there's a lot of I got problems. So, and then this is nice too. This using an old recycled um, barrel there with the heat lamp in it. It keeps that way you can kind of keep in control, and the kids can go in there without the does being bullies, and because they want the heat too, because it feels nice. But this way, they can kind of have their space. We have something somewhat similar in one of our shelters. We'll put pallets up, and so the kids can walk through the pallets, and then we'll have a big tube bulb heat lamp in there, and the kids all this know at nighttime to go into there. And that way the does don't muddy it up. The kids have some place that's warm and dry, and the does all know where their kids are. Um, so this is how to treat floppy kid syndrome and to deal with electrolytes. And you can find this on a lot of the goat Facebook pages. We can do another session just talking about kids and feeding and kidding and stuff, but this is just what's kind of been recommended. Take a screenshot of it if you like, um, and what to do with it here. and we're close to being done here. So breeding happens if you are going to be doing that. This is my old boy on the animals I started with there. He's a little Nigerian cross. His name was Freddie. Um, you can goats usually you want your goats to be king at least once a year. You can do a 3 and 2 year rotation, but just realize you're going to be kidding in wintertime. And that can be pretty hard on the does because you don't really get a lot of time in between being to being off their kids being off of them to recover their body condition and then going right back into being pregnant. So it's not recommended, but some people will do it. Will do that. So yeah, for certain breeds, depending on the length, obviously with your Nigerians, your breeding gestation days are a little bit shorter. But for the bigger goats, yeah, you're 155 days, so 5 months. And this website here is for bigger goats, but you put into there your breeding date, and it will give you your gestation date calculator. So it's a really nice little tool to have. And everybody has their own musk, so just realize that your bucklings they can start breeding at 3 months old. Um, and that's why I'm kidding in January because I had a little guy that got out at 4 months old and he bred 6 does, so that's fun to deal with. Um, and the boys will be boys. They'll practice mounting on each other and on the other does and stuff. And it's not you don't have to start being cautious until they start extending their penises that you have to be like, okay, it's time to go, especially if you're not banding them. So just be aware of that. And with when you have one buck, he will often not be as stinky because he doesn't have anything to prove his musk for. But if you also have two bucks, they will start, starting to pee on their face, drink their pee, pee on the back of their legs. There's just pee everywhere. They stink. Um, so you just, if you are going to have a buck, try to have a wether with him for a buddy, especially if he's not going to be in with the does year round. Kind of best to kind of know when your does will be kidding, so that way you can be there to support as much as possible. But just be aware that yeah, bucks are stinky, and I don't know how well this will play. So there, what that doe was doing, she was flagging. So the boys here, these are the 3 bucks that I used to have, but yeah, the she's flagging there to the boys saying that she is, in heat and that she'll be flagging or she'll start peeing and the boys will, if there was a buck there in with her, he'd be sniffing and drinking her pee to see that her hormones are ready to go. But yes, as you could hear, um, the bucks are clicking and talking to her and snorting at her, right? So, um, yeah, riding each other. Yeah, so just be aware if you've got multiple bucks, that's kind of what you could be dealing with here. So that's the end of my presentation. Pretty much kept her in 10 an hour there, so that was pretty good. And so here's some fun pictures of some goats that other producers have sent into the Alberta Goat Association, and these are my two boys from last year. So is there any questions?
That's adorable. Thank you, Mallory. I just want to share my screen here.
Oh, I can.
Okay, can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. That was a great presentation and it was really comprehensive. I mean, you covered nutrition and shelter and illness, and it was really, really good. And of course, having adorable goat pictures helps, but the pictures that you had of equipment and the different illnesses were really I found really informative. So thank you very much. So I may hand it off to Amber. I don't know if there's are any questions that are been posted. Oh, there are a few. Amber,
Yeah.
did you want to tackle those?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I actually do have a question myself, but being that people are already popping it in here, I'll jump to them and then ask mine.
Okay.
Um, Anton said, hopefully I'm saying your name right, but he said, convince me not to get goats. So that's, a different perspective. Um, Heather was asking, what was the name of the parasite course? Sorry. Um,
So it's pretty much called the Parasite and Fomantia course. That can be run by Dr. Masamagi through the Alberta Goat Association. We've put it on a couple times, but we can always coordinate and organize if there's enough interest. We've done it in the past where we did it in at Old College at their lab, and we had if you pre-ordered, depending on the ticket, either you paid just for the course, or where we did it at Old Lab, so we you had a chance to bring in your own fecal samples from home, and you could look with Old's lab equipment to see what we're looking at and how to do everything that the course teaches you, so you can do your own parasite analysis. And then also, if you paid for like the $300 ticket, it also came with a microscope at the course too. And that was really successful, but it takes a little more work to set that up than just going through some slideshows there. But there's some options like that that can be done, type of thing. So
So,
I did write down your information, Melissa, because maybe that's something us Farming Forward could or Leduc and I'll do in the future too. We can see what we can do. Um, Lynn was asking, so is there no yeah, sorry. So is there no mandatory tagging in the near future?
there will be mandatory tagging and reporting of animals in the future. It's just been delayed depending when we go into an election. It will determine how soon this can kind of step back up. So if it's going to be an October election, then it's probably not going to get the Gazette 2 is essentially what's the next step to be rolling until 2026. The idea was that if things were rolling forward without Justin Trudeau stepping down, was that starting in February, is going to be a soft start. So just trying to get producers into it. And like Alberta Goat, we've been talking about and having some courses and education about it from Canadian Food Inspection Agency and Canadian Cattle Identification Agency about how to purchase it and how it's going to work and how you're supposed to sign up for it. So yes, traceability and the tagging for this, the movement of the animal. If the animal's staying on your PID on your premises and isn't leaving it until for whatever reason, you do not need to tag. Um, just to be fully clear, because some people get excited that they have to start buying these tags and putting them to their animals' ears as soon as they're born. It's only if they're leaving your premises, type of thing. And we can have another course about that. There'll definitely be more courses in through Alberta Goat about the regulations that are coming in.
Perfect. Um, Debbie had asked to see the Fairview vet list again. Debbie, being that we switched presentations, I can email that out to all the presenters with the link and all the information if that works, or we could also see if we can open it up for you. But yeah, if you're okay with email, I can absolutely send that to you, not a problem. Turner asked is like you talk about a lot of diseases slash parasites. Are goats more prone to sickness than say cattle?
Um, well, there's two different answers there. For parasites, goats are more susceptible to parasites because they haven't evolved as grazers. Where sheep and horses and cattle, because they're grazers, they're developed more of an immune system to the parasites on the ground. Where goats, because they're browsers, they've been eating up where you're not going to have those same kind of parasites. So goats are a little more not a little more. They are more susceptible to parasites. That's why there's lots of, we strong emphasize on pasture rotation, and you can get into the moist, make sure your goats aren't going onto the dewy grass. That's more so in the States where they're more worried about that. But also just with the Flamantia course and the parasite course, just learning when to identify and when to deworm. So you're not just deworming your whole herd and creating resistance, because that's something that's been happening, especially in the States where there's like certain dewormers that just don't work because in the show rings, they would test your animal's fecal for parasites, and if it had a certain level, your animal was disqualified. So people were just heavily deworming, and it completely wrecked the diversity and the ecosystem for worms. But there are definitely like there's certain diseases that are very preventable, but there are like CAE and Yonis is preventable just by by calling and eradication in that sense, right? And with CL, you can vaccinate for it. There's a vaccine for it, and just not buying animals that are very previously sick. So it's come down to a lot of husbandry that hasn't been as maintained in Canada, that people just kind of let it kind of go. So we're been trying to promote that producers to be looking at their livestock health. And yes, compared to other, cattle can get other diseases, but yes, goats, they just haven't evolved the greatest to be as resilient.
Alex asked, is the AGA considered doing a parasite course again in the future at one of the colleges?
Well, I know Dr. Melissa Moggy is in the chat here. She's on the call right now. We can definitely discuss and look at it. One of the things that we are doing that's really big this year is we're going to do a combined goat show this year. We haven't done a goat show in like 10, 15 years with Saskatchewan on July 10th and 11th. But if there is enough interest, like we can definitely put on another big course like that. It was really successful when we did. We actually ended up being a we had so much interest. We did it on a Saturday and a Sunday kind of thing. So it's just finding the lab to do that. And if there's enough interest, then we'll definitely do it. Or do it through Farming Forward or Ladue County kind of thing. So it's a sort of collab we could do.
A little bit of a shameless plug, but if you
Yeah.
did put like absolutely for you guys doing that, it sounds like it's an amazing course. I'm actually quite interested myself. I did put the link in the chat for our survey if you guys don't mind filling it out, and you guys could put it in that that's something you're interested in. We do have a question on future events, and then we know kind of to gauge interest, and maybe we can reach out and um, to extend it, and then I did offer Melissa if you wanted to pop up and mention anything that Mallory hasn't added, but we could add you if you want. Let me just see if I can Perfect. Okay. I think so.
Is that better?
Yep.
Perfect. Mallory has covered most of the FAMANTRA course details. We're always happy to offer the course in the future. The one thing that I did want to touch on, because it has been creeping up in the United States, and I feel like the small ruminant world might think that um, we're not in danger. There is currently an outbreak of highly pathogenic avian influenza in dairy cattle in the United States. And so previously, you might have heard of it as bird flu or avian flu. So we have the highly pathogenic avian influenza virus going through Canada, yes, but as of right now, it has only been in birds. There is a possibility that it could go to goats. And so because of that, we really stress the importance, like Mallory did before, of avoiding any contamination of food and water, and that includes access by wild birds. There's only been one reported case of goat getting highly pathogenic avian influenza, and that was from being exposed at birth. They were exposed to the virus, and they actually showed neurological signs, and unfortunately, they all did die. There's some suspicion that there were other factors at play, but I just wanted everyone to know that we want to avoid exposure to wild birds as much as possible. So if you like to feed wild birds, don't do that around where you feed your goats as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. It is a thing that's kind of coming up in the news lately. So, thank you. Michelle has asked, we've been using CO like a cob
Cob.
mix, or is it cob?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
We've been using cob mix and black oil sunflower seeds for our grain mix. Is there anything wrong with having corn or sunflower seeds? Should we be changing our grain blend?
No, I think that's a really good blend. I was gonna say, because I was kind of reading ahead there that Barry Yarsimo, he's still in the industry here a little bit. He's a great guy. He is a really great ally for the goat industry, and he can talk more about that. But your black sunflower seeds, that has, I can't remember the name of the chemical in it, but it also helps um with deworming type of thing. But you have to feed like a lot of it, but it helps with that. So a lot of things that you're feeding there is a great mix. I and you know, a 10 out of 10 score for providing that. But yeah, if there's anything else like that, I'll put it in the chat here. Barry Yarsimo for any nutrition questions about your we've had him talk before too, where he really helped us, and believe we have it saved on our website underneath our members page, about how to read your hay test results when they come back, so that you can understand what it means, like phosphorus, this is, it doesn't always tell you, or you don't understand, is that low, is that high? So he could be really great. I think other feed and forage associations can help you with that too. But Barry's just a really great resource, and if you want to talk to him about goats, he will always listen uh, to a goat producer about that. Um, where's so the table scraps one, that's a great question too. So I know a lot of people are, I think it's called the a loop program, that like grocery stores, you can get food from grocery stores that might be going to waste. So we've had some really good discussion about that at Alberta Goat. The only thing that I get concerned with about it is that there's certain fruits and vegetables that can be really dangerous to goats. Like your citrus, you don't want the goats to be having that, and your citrus foods. Apples, the apples are okay, but again, if they have too much of the apple seeds because there's cyanide in it, that can cause problems. It's more so when it comes to like your potato and tomato plants, where they are part of the, I'm blanking out, but that is can be poisonous to them. So it's
It's
talk to Alberta
probably the nightshade family. Is that it?
Nightshade, thank you. Um, is probably the best to, we're right now, I think Alberta Goat, we have been talking a little bit more about it, maybe getting a fact sheet or information sheet, just because there's just so much variation of information out there about what goats can eat from your garden and what they can get from the grocery store on those programs, that we just I just caution with it, because it's too much of one thing cannot be always good for you, right? So there's I caution with it, but if you're getting your leftover lettuce and your celery, those kinds of things like that, that's fine. But giving, I believe rhubarb is one of them that you don't want to give. And again, I don't have the list on top of my head, but I give extreme caution onto it, that you can poison them. And some people do it and they've have no problems, but it's always heartbreaking when you do something on a trying to be kind and you end up hurting your animals. So, do you have any suggestions on selecting a vet? So, maybe Melissa can answer this. We did, when AFAC was still around, on their website, they actually had a section of their website where you could put your postal code in, and they would tell, and then you could select your livestock that you had, so goats, and it would tell you in a certain radius of what vets in that radius would deal with goats. And now AFAC isn't there anymore, and I'm not too sure where that tool has gone to. Um, Melissa, do you have any?
Yeah, the tool is actually right here.
Okay.
Yeah, we are hoping to add it to the Alberta Goat Association website. We have to figure out how to do that right now, because it would still be nice for you to be able to put in your postal code and just search what's nearest. But in the meantime, I would encourage you to contact Alberta Goat Association so that we can try and find a goat in your area. I do also have some good news, is that as of yesterday, there is a small ruminant course being put on by, I believe it's by Animal Health Canada. I could be wrong. And there are over 300 vets that have registered for that course. So hopefully we'll get some more.
Yeah, and that's something at the goat industry we've really it's been acknowledged that there's not enough vets to deal with small ruminants. So not just goats, but with sheep, that knowledge to do it. So there's been I believe in Alberta anyways, we've been put a lot of initiative and push for to have more recognition uh, and and because the government wants us to be able to do certain things, but and be a part of certain programs, but as the industry we go, well, in central Manitoba or northern Manitoba or northern Saskatchewan or Alberta or anywhere in certain parts, is there a vet there that can recognize and diagnose this on a goat or be able to run this program that you guys want? And go, well, no. Well, then you can't make it mandatory without that support from the vet community. So, are there more animals compatible with goats if a farm wants more than one species? So sheep and others. So, what's great is so there's called like obviously with your rotational, but also multi-species grazing. So with your goats, and Melissa could probably talk more about this too in the parasite course, because goats, they want to eat the top part of the grass because that's where you're going to have less of those parasites living. So, and goats, again, because they're browsers, they want to eat up. So if you can have, your sheep and cattle and goats and horses and stuff together, but just realize that, you need to be able to, manage safely that your goats and your cattle are still getting their copper, where your sheep, maybe at that time don't get access to that part of the pen at that time of the day, kind of thing. But for your multi-species grazing type of thing, you want to have your goats come in and then your sheep come in because they'll eat the next level of grass in your pasture, and then you have your cattle come in and they'll eat that, they have their immune system can handle that type of parasite a lot better. So there's been really great studies on that type of rotational, sorry, not rotational, but multi-species grazing. So there you can make things work and live together. You just have to just realize that copper is so important, but it's also really dangerous to your sheep here. Yeah, really excited about the goat show. Yeah, we are to the Alberta Goat. We're managing the meat side of the show, and Saskatchewan Goat is going to be managing the dairy side of the show. So yeah, we're really excited to have that at the Lloydminster Fair and in July there, and I'll be there. I'm going to try to help manage and show some goats with my kids and myself at the same time. So it's been a while since we've done that, so we're excited to do that with another province and provincial. There will be posting where the committee is supposed to be having a couple more meetings here about the goat show. We're actually going to have our meeting on Friday, and that'll be one of the main topics about who's can do what with the show. But it'll be posted on our website and on Facebook, and I can always also share it with Leduc County too to share any updates about that. Permission.
I can jump in really quickly too if you want.
Yep.
Thank you for taking over. I fixed
Sorry.
the back end of that. No, I appreciate it. I fixed the link there, so that should work, and I appreciate you just smoothly keep going. The question was, do you have any? Do you have to provide grain, or is hay sufficient?
You can do hay, but the idea that with your grain is that you're helping their ruminant move and get that extra nutrition and vitamins that if your hay is going to be lacking it, and it's also going to help and promote the growth of those meat kids. And if you're doing dairy, it's going to be important that they have that so that you have your milk quality and your fat quality in the milk, depending what you're doing with it. It will be important, and also if you're doing fiber, it'd be important for that growth and for those does. Grain, and even with the cattle too, it's important for after those does they wean their kids off and they're getting their body back into condition, is having that grain there to give them that extra energy, especially in Alberta. Like I know you guys just got finished having our storm that started in the Peace Country and made its way across the province here with all that wind. Just giving them that extra fat and energy to stay warm. They do have their undercoat there, the cashmere is their undercoat. But that grain just helps just keep them maintain their body. And if they start getting worn down because they're just trying to use hay as their supplement for food and nutrition, they're going to, in this cold weather, are going to deteriorate, and you're just going to have more problems and frustrations, is in my opinion.
Awesome. Um, if looking to get into goats on a hobby farm scale, is there a minimum herd size to have a healthy herd?
Well, for goats, anyways, for a hobby farm, goats are obviously herd animals, so having more than one, which is yay for some people there, is going to be key. So depending on your acreage and size that you have, is going to be kind of is going to be your limiting factor, and how much you can afford for feed in the wintertime, and shelter and water and electricity, um, is going to be. So if you just have it and you're just keeping them for pets, but I guess depending on what your definition of hobbying is, if you're doing and what you're doing with it, if you're doing it for meat and that's your kind of end goal with it, or if you're just doing it for pets, that it kind of depends on what you're wanting to do. Um, with it. But yeah, it's the size that you have. And if you got too many animals on a pasture, like we've talked about, and you're just going to run into worm issues, right? So
So speaking of like numbers on pasture, the next question is, do you do any rotational grazing on your cropland? And if so, what do you plant and your stocking rate?
so we do rotational grazing. We've got 8 to 10 pastures that we can use. We just set up electric fence to go into those areas of bush. So we've got 2 quarter sections that we use, and we have them divided up. So the idea is that we're watching them, and they're, again, because it is bush, they're eating the grass that's just naturally grown in there. It used to be old cattle pasture from when I was younger. So it's just wild grasses that are growing there. But there's also stuff that was put into hay that we have, that we section it off for our rotational grazing type of thing. So right now in the summertime, I'm running, or once my doe is all kid, I'm 200 goats with all the between the does and the kids going through a quarter section and a half, I guess, because the other of it's my living areas. Um, so that would be, you're looking at so when you're going with your grasses, like your Timothy, your alfalfa mix, your grasses like that, there's and your clover is fine. And then that's where with clover you get into that, well, horses can't be there, right? But alfalfa is fine too, as long as it's not straight alfalfa, because they could bloat on that and get pretty sick on that. But if you have a nice grass mix, there's other grasses that I can't remember at the top of my head, but Barry Yarsimo or your forage associations will have really good suggestions, um, for if you want to get into anything a little more exotic. But they're eating the tops of the grasses essentially, right? So that's what they want. And obviously anything you have willows, they love eating willows, and and Christmas trees, or any pine or needle trees, they like eating those too. So, and any regrowth that's happening in your pasture, just realize that too with like with small trees and saplings. I've had trees that were about an inch around that were a new area that we had fenced off, and those does put the tree into their armpit and walked it down and just stripped the trees of their leaves. So they will do it. They like to eat up. So
Um, I'm just sorry, I'm
yeah,
picturing the goats knocking a tree over.
yeah,
Um, is the 10-10 goat ration enough
yeah.
for
Ration.
the minerals, or should we be adding additional copper and selenium? We also free feed baking soda there in Leduc County.
New County. Yeah, I think again, Barry would be the best to, if there's, because I'm not familiar with the 10-10 goat ration, so I can't fully comment on it. But it doesn't hurt to have, like at UFA, they've got this red copper that I put into PVC pipe that has like a 40 coming off of it. And the goats, they have free choice to that. And I just keep it in the shelters, and it's just blocked in there, and the goats have access to that whenever and if they need it. I find it a lot easier than trying to feed them the copper bolus pills that you can give them. Um, and and they're not going to get poisoned on it. So it's if you're adding it, and same thing with the selenium. Selenium's got kind of a more of a bitter taste to it, is what has been explained to me. So sometimes they won't go for it. But if it's mixed in with your minerals, is enough of it, they should be getting it. And also with the selenium, you can overdose on that. So again, just asking your vet or like a guy like Barry Osmo or your feed guy to find out for you if that is a appropriate amount, because and if you're and making sure that what can happen is if you've got salt blocks out, your goats are going to be wanting to lick those blue salt blocks instead of going to your loose mineral because they like the salt more than kind of the taste of the mix. So be watching that balance of having kind of choose one or the other, or being pulling one out as you get close to kitting time. So those does are really going for those minerals type of thing. So you don't have too much of an imbalance, thinking that they're all eating it, but sometimes they don't. So um, probably one of my things is to suggest.
I see. I think we might have missed this question. I might have skipped over it, so I apologize. Are there any risks of providing like table scrap treats to goats on an ongoing basis?
So I touched on that. That
Oh,
was the
perfect.
Loop program and talking about like garden vegetables and stuff. And yeah, so I touched on it.
Perfect. Just want to make sure we're not missing anybody. Is there any other questions while I'm looking quickly? Um, I actually, while I'm just checking this out, I was kind of curious. You had mentioned scours. Is there two different types of scours? Like, is there an infectious one and a non-infectious one, or are they all able to cross over to humans? Like, is it the same thing?
That would be a Melissa question.
Okay.
Just like how there's like an infinite number of things that can give us diarrhea, there's a lot of things that can give goats diarrhea, and especially kids, since their GIs are just learning how to work. So the easy answer is like not all scours is contagious to humans, but it should be treated as such just in case.
That makes perfect sense. So, perfect. Well, is there any last questions? I'm thinking we've got them all. Um, I will, uh, first off, thank you both, Mallory. We really appreciate you being here, and then Melissa for you jumping in to talk about the course that you have. And we do appreciate the Goat Association for also being the presenters. So thank you for that. Um, and we will be sending out all the information, like Sharon had mentioned. We'll send out the slides, and we can link a bunch of kind of the websites and stuff that were in the chat for you guys, including that Fairview vet list. So yeah, thank you. And
And I guess the thing I would just add, if there's more interest to go more into depth of kitting and kitting solutions and um, um, well, we can do that as well. We have that essentially set up as well. Because I just kind of broke her down to the simple basics of the goat industry. If there's more interest about fiber or dairy, and not just milking, but like with dairy, you have the cheeses, but you can also make lotions and soaps. We can coordinate and organize most things. We are going to be having our AGM here, I believe in February sometime, and we are having Bill Castillo from Texas University talk about livestock guardian dogs and the research and stuff that they've done at Texas with working with guardian dogs and small ruminants. So.
So, Mallory, just to jump in, so you mentioned a few different courses, whether it's fiber or dairy related. So, do you offer like mostly webinars, or if people are wanting to put in suggestions, are you thinking there's some workshop opportunities here, or
Yep.
both?
Oh yeah. We could do something at the Leduc County office there.
Mhm.
We've got a couple directors on the board that are um, into the dairy industry with the soaps and lotions and stuff, or
Mm.
or
Mhm.
or we're aware of somebody that is into it,
Yes.
and that
Okay.
we can definitely put on a workshop like that. So if there's enough interest.
Okay. Okay. There's some food for thought.
Are we missing anything else, Sharon, or do?
No. No, this is
Awesome. It's been good. Thank you very
mm.
much.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was really interesting.
Right. Thank you very much, you guys, and I hope you guys learned a lot. And if there's other questions, you can always reach out to the Alberta Goat, and albertagoat.com is our website, and
Okay.
always here to help.
All right. Great. Thank you.